I'm Sharon Betters, and you are listening to the Daily Treasure podcast produced by Mark Inc. Ministries. Thank you so much for joining us. We are continuing in our special series called Treasures Along the Way, and our guest writer this week is my husband, Chuck. Today's devotional is Why God Can Be Trusted, and today's treasure is Hebrews 6, verse 10. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him, as you have helped his people and continue to help them. John decided to leave the little church and return home to his family. Already disappointed hearts sunk in fear. Others had already left the small house church, but John had been part of the core group. His attendance had been sporadic lately. He seemed distant and weary, but they just thought he was busier than normal. If he quit, who could stand up under the growing, spreading persecution? No one in their group was a stranger to the public taunts, social and economic isolation, and suspicion of their family and friends, as we read in Hebrews 10:33. In the past, such treatment had pulled them together. They were proud to be identified as followers of Christ, as we read in Hebrews 10:33. Suffering was part of the call. They thought back to the times they had publicly associated with others who were imprisoned. You can see this in Hebrews 10, verses 32 through 34. Even the loss of their possessions did not dissuade them from their newfound faith. Though encouraging one another with words and deeds was increasingly difficult, they had not quit. But each day brought challenges that made perseverance more excruciating. Why did life have to be so hard? Didn't they serve the God of the universe? Couldn't he see what was happening to his children? Maybe John and all the others were right. Maybe it was time to give up and go back to life before Christ. What counsel would you give to these discouraged Hebrew Christians? What if you knew their circumstances would not improve and the persecution was spreading? Have you ever longed for what was, wishing you could go back to a happier day? Perhaps your happier day is actually a fantasy, what you imagine would make you content with your life. These Hebrew Christians wanted to go back to what was. The fires of persecution were heating up, and though none of them had died for their faith, others had, and rumors of martyrdom were growing closer and hotter. The purpose of the letter to the Hebrews was to exhort these believers to persevere in the journey marked out by God for them. We can read that in Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 4. The writer did not cover his readers with cliches. He told them why God could be trusted. They needed a macro worldview that saw the purposes, promises, and character of God through a spiritual wide-angle lens. They needed to understand biblical truth, just as we do. I can relate to these Hebrew Christians because I wanted to give up when our 16-year-old son, Mark, and his friend, Kelly, were in a fatal car accident. I wanted to go back to what was, that perfect moment when all was right with the world. Hebrews was written for people like me, and maybe you. The writer of Hebrews seems to know the questions people like us ask when darkness covers our soul. Like, God, where are you? Why won't you speak to him? In Hebrews 1, verses 1 through 2, he gives us the answer. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. In other words, friends, God has spoken through the prophets, in his word, and the sacrifice of his Son. He has said everything that needs to be said. Hear him. Or this question: my life is a mess. I'm so afraid of today, let alone the future. Can I really trust God? We read the answer in Hebrews 1:3. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. In other words, Jesus sustains the universe with one word. Can he not sustain you? God is sovereign, and you can trust him. Throughout the rest of Hebrews, the writer reminds his readers that God has already kept his promise of redemption by sending his son, Jesus. We can trust him to keep all of his promises, just as he said. In this messy world, when we want to quit our journey of faith, to give up because the heat of life is scorching our souls like these broken believers, we need to revisit our worldview, the grid through which we view all of life, and a place to start is simple. God is sovereign. You can trust him. The real question is, will you? Hey friends, thanks for joining us for Treasures Along the Way. And, as I think back on treasures along the way where God has sent me gifts to help turn my heart toward him, one of the sweetest treasures was to know that people were praying for us. Sometimes in the middle of the night, we would be able to sleep, and the next day a friend would say, I couldn't sleep last night, and so I was praying for you. And I felt I was able to sleep because they prayed. Well, we would like to pray for you. We would like to know what your prayer requests are. We would like to link arms with you. So we would like for you to send us your prayer request. Our team meets on a monthly basis, but we also pray in between for you. You can send your prayer requests by going to helpandhopenow.org. Just go to helpandhopenow.org and look for where to send us your prayer request. It's very clearly marked on our website. And we will be excited to join you in praying for you as you walk by faith wherever God has placed you. I'm Sharon Betters. Thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to being with you tomorrow.